The farmer paid $100 for an abandoned farm, but found a duchess asking for a husband. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Jonathan Clark held the worn brim of his hat between his hands, as if it might run away from him. The office smelled faintly of ink and old smoke. Behind the heavy desk sat Mr. Pritchard, the Duke's agent in that part of the state, sleeves rolled to the elbow, vest stretching over a comfortable belly. He barely looked up while Jonathan waited, the deed already written, the ink glistening on the page. "So," Mr. Pritchard said at last, dipping his pen again, "you're the fellow, Jonathan Clark." "Yes, sir." "You understand the terms?" "I pay $100, Jonathan said, careful to keep his voice steady. "And in return, His Grace's office transfers full rights to the property listed in the deed." Mr. Pritchard's mouth twitched. "Full rights to what some would call a mistake on the map," he replied. "You have seen the land?" "I saw it once from the road," Jonathan answered. "I know it is neglected, but land is land." Pritchard shrugged. "His Grace owns more acres than he can count. This little farm has brought nothing but tax notices and complaints for years. Useless soil, no tenants willing to stay. You're doing us a kindness, Mr. Clark." Jonathan swallowed. $100. All his savings. Every coin he had managed to put aside after a lifetime of working other men's fields. "I mean to make something of it," he said. The agent finally met his eyes, amused. "Men mean all sorts of things," Pritchard replied. "Very well. The price is as agreed. $100 cash." Jonathan unfolded the bundle of bills, smoothing each one with work-rough fingers. The money looked small on the broad surface of the desk. Pritchard counted it quickly, then pushed forward the deed and pen. "Sign here, and here. That will see the matter closed." Jonathan signed, his name crooked but clear. As he did, he felt a strange mixture of fear and triumph. For the first time in his life, something bore his name as owner, not laborer. Pritchard sprinkled sand over the ink, blew it away, then pushed the deed toward Jonathan. "There. It's yours now. Every miserable inch of it." Jonathan folded the deed with care. "It may be miserable today," he said quietly, "but it will be mine." Pritchard chuckled and reached for another stack of papers. "As you wish." Next, Jonathan stepped out into the street, still holding his hat in one hand and the deed in the other. The late afternoon sun was bright, throwing long shadows along the wooden sidewalks. 2 men leaned against the post outside the general store, watching him. "That him?" one asked. "The fool who bought the Duke's graveyard?" "That's him." Jonathan heard them as he always heard such things. The words slid over him like grit. He put his hat on and tried to walk with the calm of a man who knew what he was doing. Inside the store, Mrs. Harrow, the owner's wife, greeted him with a brisk nod. "Afternoon, Mr. Clark. You look like a man with something on his mind." "Afternoon, ma'am. I have a list, if that counts." He placed the crumpled list on the counter. Flour, coffee, salt, nails, lamp oil. He had measured the money in his pocket 3 times before writing it. As she read, her eyes flicked to the folded paper in his hand. "What's that you've got there?" "A deed," Jonathan said before he could stop himself. "A deed?" She stared. "To what? You didn't go and buy that old farm of the Duke's, did you?" He hesitated, then lifted his chin. "Yes, ma'am, I did." A boy stocking shelves nearby snorted. "Bought the ghost farm, did you?" he called. "Heard even the crows won't land there." "Tommy," Mrs. Harrow snapped, "mind your work." But she was looking at Jonathan with the same mixture of curiosity and pity. "Mr. Clark," she said more gently, "you're a hard worker. No one can deny that. But that place, it's dry as bone. Folks say the well's gone bad. No crops have taken root there in years." "I have planted in worse," Jonathan replied. "If it has soil and sun, I can coax something from it. And if I fail, at least I have failed on my own land." $100, they say, Tommy muttered. "Could have done better throwing it in the river." Jonathan straightened. "The money is spent, son," he said quietly, "and what's done cannot be undone with talk." Mrs. Harrow sighed and began pulling items from the shelves. "You'll be needing extra water to haul out," she murmured, "and good boots. The ground there is rough and stubborn. I have boots." He managed a small smile. "Rough and stubborn suits me well enough." As he paid for the supplies, More than one customer turned to watch. Whispers brushed the air. So he actually did it. Imagine putting all your savings into that place. He'll be back in a month begging for work again. Jonathan gathered his parcels and walked out into the street, trying not to let the words sink too deep. He had heard people laugh at him before. They had laughed when he left the boarding house to live in a rented shack. They had laughed when he planted corn in a field everyone said was spent. He had seen those same men take off their hats when the corn stood high. Outside, his old wagon waited, hitched to a patient mare with a dull brown coat. He loaded the supplies carefully, laid the folded deed on top of a wooden crate, and took the reins. "Well, girl," he said softly, "shall we go see our kingdom of dust?" The mare flicked her ears as if in answer. He drove out of town along the main road, the town's noise fading behind him. The houses ended, fields took their place, then patches of scrub and empty land. The air grew cooler as the sun slid lower. Jonathan's mind ran ahead of the wheels. He pictured himself repairing fences, clearing weeds, patching the roof of the farmhouse. He imagined rows of corn, maybe a kitchen garden, perhaps even a few chickens. It would not be much, but it would be his. No landlord knocking at the door, no overseer counting his hours. He also saw the faces of those who had laughed, their mouths twisted around the word fool. He pressed his lips together and tried to set their voices aside. The road grew narrower, the ruts deeper. Grass pushed up between the tracks. A hawk circled overhead. Jonathan could hear the creak of the wagon, the rhythmic steps of the horse, the steady beat of his own heart. At last, he saw the old fence line, leaning and broken, running along the edge of the property. Beyond it lay his farm. The farmhouse appeared as a grey shape against the horizon, alone and still. "There it is," he murmured. He turned the wagon off the main track and followed the faint path toward the house. Weeds brushed the wheels. A few stubborn trees stood like sentries. As he drew nearer, details emerged. Missing shingles on the roof, a sagging porch, windows clouded with dust. No smoke rose from the chimney. No movement stirred in the yard. It looked every bit the abandoned place everyone had described. Jonathan brought the wagon to a halt and climbed down. His boots sank slightly into the dry earth. He stood for a moment, taking in the sight. The farmhouse had once been handsome, he thought. There was a certain grace to its lines, even with the paint peeling and the steps worn. "All right," he said under his breath. "Let's see what we've bought." He took a step toward the porch. "Stop right there," a voice called. He froze. It was a woman's voice, clear and commanding, edged with something that might have been fear. It came from the shadowed doorway of the house. Jonathan turned slowly. A figure stood in the open doorway, half hidden by the dim interior. As his eyes adjusted, he saw a woman in a dress that had long since lost its color. The fabric was torn at the hem and patched at the elbows. Yet the cut of it, the way it fit her shoulders and waist, spoke of a different life than his. Her hair was gathered at the back of her head in a style that, though loose and untidy now, had once been carefully arranged. Her face was pale, her cheekbones fine, her gaze sharp and steady. She held herself straight, as if she refused to bend with the house around her. "You are on private property," she said. "State your business." Jonathan lifted his hands slightly, palms empty. "My name is Jonathan Clark," he replied. "I purchased this farm from the Duke's office this afternoon. I have the deed in my wagon. This land is mine." She studied him in silence. Her eyes swept over his worn jacket, his rough boots, his sun-darkened hands. "For you bought it," she repeated as if testing the words. "For yourself?" "Yes." "How much did you pay?" He hesitated. $100. A strange light flickered in her eyes. Not laughter, not quite anger. Something like bitter amusement. $100, she murmured. "That sounds about right for my worth these days." He frowned. "Your worth? Ma'am, I apologize if I've startled you. I was told the place was abandoned." "Of course you were." She stepped forward into the light, and he saw her more clearly. Some faint pattern of lace still clung to the collar of her dress. A small brooch, missing its stone, was pinned at her throat. What else would they say? That they left someone here? Jonathan felt the back of his neck prickle. "You live here?" he asked. "I exist here," she replied. "Living implies choice. I had very little of that when I was brought to this place." She moved to the edge of the porch, her hand resting lightly on a cracked wooden column. "You are trespassing on my home, Mr. Clark. I will ask you again. What is your business?" Jonathan drew a breath. "I mean no harm, ma'am. As I said, I purchased this land in good faith. If there has been a mistake, we can sort it out. But the deed bears my name. And mine bears everything else," she said. For the first time, he heard the tremor beneath her control. She straightened. "I suppose we should begin properly. You say you are Jonathan Clark. Very well, I am Eleanor Whitmore." The name meant nothing to him, but the way she spoke it did. It was not the way a farmer's daughter would give her name, nor even the way a shopkeeper's wife might. There was a small practiced pause between first and last, as if she had said it countless times in drawing rooms and ballrooms where every introduction carried weight. "Miss Whitmore," he said, nodding politely. Her chin lifted a fraction. "Duchess," she corrected. He stared. "I beg your pardon." She did not seem offended by his surprise. If anything, a trace of tired humor touched her mouth. "Duchess Eleanor Whitmore," she repeated. "At least, that is what they called me when they wished to appear generous. In truth, I am the Duke's orphaned niece, close enough for convenience, distant enough to forget." Jonathan tried to assemble this information and place it against the reality before him. A noble woman in a torn dress standing on the porch of a farm everyone had described as empty. "You are related to the Duke," he said slowly. "Indeed." Her eyes did not leave his face. "And you, Mr. Clark, have just purchased the only piece of land in this country where he thought he could hide me." Jonathan looked back at the wagon, at the road, at the silent house. The wind stirred the dry grass at his feet. "Hide you," he repeated. "From whom?" "From everyone," she said simply. "From society, from inconvenient questions, from legal agreements he no longer wishes to honor." She paused. "And now, perhaps, from you." Jonathan stepped closer to the porch, stopping a respectful distance away. "I do not understand," he said. "Why would the Duke hide his own kin on a deserted farm? Why would he sell the land if you are here?" "That is a longer story than you may wish to hear this evening," she replied. "For now, it is enough to say that this farm was my prison, and your purchase has unlocked the door." He glanced at the house. "How long have you been here?" "Long enough for the seasons to forget my name," she said. "Long enough for my dresses to wear through and my letters to go unanswered." Her voice softened, then hardened again. "Tell me, Mr. Clark, when you bought this place, did they say anything of its history? Of the woman sent here to recover her nerves and never invited back?" "No," he said. "They said only that the land was barren and the house neglected, that it brought the Duke no profit and too much nuisance." She closed her eyes briefly. "Nuisance," she murmured. "Yes, that sounds like him." When she opened them, the steel was back. "And what do you mean to do with this barren nuisance land, Mr. Clark?" "Farm it," he answered, "or try to. Live here, make a home. I have no other." She studied him again, more carefully. "A home," she said softly. "Do you have a family?" "No, ma'am. I was alone before I came. It seems I may not be alone now." A faint color touched her cheeks. "You are very calm," she observed. "Most men, upon finding an unexpected woman in their new home, would be considerably more agitated." He spread his hands. "I am agitated," he admitted. "I simply see no use in shouting about it. You are here. The deed is also here. Neither fact will vanish if I raise my voice." Something like a reluctant smile flickered across her face, then died quickly. "You speak like a sensible man," she said. "We shall need that." "We." She took a breath, then let it out slowly. "When they brought me here," she began, "they told me I would remain until a suitable arrangement was made. I was young enough to believe them. I thought perhaps a cousin would come or an old family friend. Months passed. Letters were sent. No answer came. Servants left and did not return. Eventually, I understood." "Understood what?" "That I had been placed where it was convenient to forget me," she said, "and that the only way my fate would change was if someone from outside the family stepped into this place and refused to be moved as they wished." She looked at the distant road. "I had heard rumors that the Duke meant to dispose of the farm. I thought perhaps he would sell it quietly to some trusted associate, someone who could be persuaded to keep our little secret. I did not expect—" She trailed off. "You did not expect a farmer with one wagon and $100, Jonathan finished. "No," she agreed. "I did not expect you." Silence settled between them for a moment, filled only by the creak of the wagon harness. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Duchess, Eleanor," she interrupted, "if we are to speak frankly, it will be easier without titles." "Very well. Eleanor." The name felt unfamiliar in his mouth, but not unpleasant. "You say my purchase has unlocked your prison. I do not see how. I am no lawyer. I have no influence over a duke. You have more influence over him than you think," she replied. "Perhaps not as Jonathan Clark, poor farmer, but as Jonathan Clark, lawful owner of this specific piece of land and potentially something more." His brow furrowed. "Something more?" A faint tremor ran through her hand where it rested on the porch column. She drew herself up, as if stepping onto an invisible stage. "There were documents," she said, "drafted years ago, when my uncle still believed I could be useful. He meant to settle this farm as part of my dowry. The idea was simple. I would marry a man of appropriate rank, and together we would hold a small but strategic property within his wider holdings. It was a way of binding alliances, land and blood, as they always say." "And did you marry this man?" Jonathan asked carefully. "No." Her jaw tightened. "I refused. He was cruel, and I would not bind my life to his temper. My refusal displeased my uncle greatly. Plans changed. The documents were quietly set aside, or so they thought." "You still have them?" "I have copies," she said, "enough to trouble my uncle if they were ever brought before people who understand such things. Copies that name me in connection with this land, and that contain a particular clause he has always hoped no one would notice." "What clause?" She met his gaze, steady now. "That if I were to marry the owner of this farm," she said clearly, "certain rights and privileges concerning surrounding properties would be granted to us. To me and my husband. Rights that could be used to challenge some of my uncle's long comfortable arrangements." Jonathan stared at her. "You are saying," he began slowly, "that the man who owns this farm, if he were to marry you, would have certain legal power over the Duke's lands." "In a small but inconvenient way, yes," she answered. "It would not topple him, but it would annoy him, and men like my uncle do not tolerate annoyance." He ran a hand through his hair. "And you believe that is why he sent you here? Why he left you here?" "I believe he wished to remove both the troublesome niece and the troublesome clause from his path without open scandal," she said. "If I married no one, the clause meant nothing. If the farm lay unused, no one would think to ask about it. If in time I faded from memory, that would suit him even better." She watched him carefully. "And now," she added, "here you are, a man who has bought this land without knowing what it carries. A man who has by accident become the key to everything my uncle wanted to bury." Jonathan let out a slow breath. "You speak as if I walked into a trap meant for you." "In truth," she said quietly, "I think we are both standing in a snare meant for us together. The difference is that you still have the option to walk away." He looked around at the farm, at the house, at the horizon. "If I walk away," he said, "I lose everything I have. This deed is all that stands between me and going back to begging for work." "If you stay," she replied, "you may gain more than you imagined. Or you may find yourself facing a duke's displeasure, which is not a thing to be taken lightly, even without guns or fists." He studied her face. Beneath the control and the practiced calm, he saw something else. Weariness, yes, but also determination. She had not surrendered to the emptiness around her. She had waited. "You said you needed someone from outside the family," he said slowly. "Someone who would not be moved as they wished." "I did. You also said I might become something more than the owner of this land." Her eyes did not waver. "There is only one way to make that clause in the old documents live again," she said. "The man who owns this farm must marry the woman named in them, me." Jonathan's throat went dry. "You are saying," he managed, "that you have been waiting here for a husband." "I have been waiting here," she corrected, "for a man who might be willing to become my husband, yes. Not for love, not at first, for protection, for a partnership of necessity. A man who wants this land enough to stand by my side when others come to take it back." He shook his head slowly. "This is a great deal to ask of a stranger you met on your porch." "You think I do not know that?" she replied, and for the first time her voice shook. "Do you think it does not shame me to speak of myself as if I were part of a bargain? I would have preferred a life where I could choose without such shadows. But I am past the luxury of perfect choices, Mr. Clark. I am down to the choices that remain. She drew herself up again. You have bought a farm that many consider worthless, she said. In truth, it is more valuable than they suspect, and more dangerous to hold. Others will come, once they realize the deed has changed hands. They will come with polite words and proper papers, and they will try to undo what has been done. They will try to send me away again. When that happens, you must decide whether you will stand as the owner in truth, or step aside. Jonathan felt the air around him grow still. The mare shifted behind him, the harness jingling softly, the only sound. And you? He asked quietly. What is it you want, beneath all this talk of documents and rights? She hesitated, just for a heartbeat. I want to stop being forgotten, she said. I want to live somewhere because I chose to, not because someone left me there like a parcel no one wished to claim. I want a home, even if it is a small and stubborn one, and a life where I am not always at the mercy of distant decisions. I want— She stopped herself, shaking her head. But what I want matters less than what you are willing to risk. He looked down at his hands. They were rough, scarred from years of work. Not the hands of a man meant to marry a duchess, yet they were his. This life was his. I came here thinking I was buying a piece of earth, he said slowly. A house, some fields, a chance to be my own man. Instead, I find a woman who claims to be a duchess, who tells me this land is a knot tied around her life and her family's secrets. If I believe you, I step into a quarrel far above my station. If I do not, you leave me here, she finished. Alone again, waiting for the next man they choose to send. And I suspect the next one will not be as honest as you. Her eyes met his, clear and unflinching. I am not asking for an answer tonight, she said more gently. I am only telling you that your purchase was no accident. Whether you believe in Providence or not, Mr. Clark, you and I are entangled now. And those others you spoke of, he said. You are certain they will come? She looked past him toward the road as if she could already see dust rising on the horizon. I am certain my uncle's office will not ignore a change in ownership for long, she said. They watch every piece of paper that crosses their desk. Somewhere a clerk has already marked the sale. Somewhere a man like Mr. Pritchard has already sent a message. And when the Duke realizes that this farm is no longer safely in his pocket, but in the hands of a stranger with nothing to lose, she turned back to him, her voice low and steady. Others will come to claim what you have just bought, Jonathan Clark, and they will not stop at words unless you choose to stand beside me. Jonathan did not sleep in the house that first night. Eleanor offered the small room at the back, the one that had once belonged to some forgotten servant, but he shook his head. I have my bedroll in the wagon, he said. I'll use that on the porch. Until we know where we stand, it seems wiser. Wiser for whom? She asked. For both of us, he replied. If someone passes by, they will see a man keeping watch over his property, not hiding in a lady's house. She considered this, then nodded. Very well. There is a pump at the side. The water is not pleasant, but it serves. If you wake in the night and hear noises, do not be alarmed. The house creaks when the wind shifts. I have slept in barns, he replied lightly. A creaking house will seem almost grand. Something like a smile touched her face, then slipped away. Good night, Mr. Clark. Good night, Eleanor. She went inside. He unrolled his blanket on the porch, lay down with his coat under his head, and stared up at the sliver of sky he could see between the porch roof and the eaves. The stars were faint, but they were there. His thoughts tumbled over each other. A duchess in a torn dress, a farm tied to papers he had never seen, the notion of marriage spoken like a practical solution instead of a miracle. He was not a man given to long speculation. The questions circled anyway. Eventually, exhaustion pulled him under. He woke before dawn to the sound of movement inside the house. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then the rough boards beneath him reminded him. He sat up, stiff, and pushed the door open. Eleanor stood at the small stove in the kitchen, feeding kindling into a sluggish flame. Her sleeves were rolled, her hair hastily pinned up. The sight unsettled him more than her talk of dukes had. She looked almost ordinary. You are awake, she said without turning. The floorboards announce every step, he replied. I noticed that long ago. She placed a dented kettle on the stove. There is coffee, of a sort. I confess I have stretched the last few beans farther than they deserved. He hesitated near the doorway. May I come in? It is as much your kitchen now as mine, she said. If we are to argue about ownership, let it not be over a cracked pot. He stepped inside, setting his hat on the table. You manage well, he said, for someone left with so little. I had little choice. She reached for 2 cups, mismatched, and set them on the table. They left supplies at first, then fewer, then none. I grew accustomed to making do. He watched her move about the kitchen with practiced efficiency. The dress that had once been fine now bore neat patches. The table was scrubbed, though scarred. A few shelves held plates, jars, a small bundle of books. What of money? He asked. Did they leave you any? A small allowance, she said, sent irregularly. Enough to purchase flour, coffee, soap. The shopkeeper in town believes me to be a widow of modest means. He does not ask questions, and I do not answer them. You go into town? Sometimes, she said. Not often. It is a few miles' walk, and I found that every trip brought more curiosity than comfort. He poured water into a basin and washed his face, the cold biting his skin awake. When we go next, he said, we should go together. They will hear of the sale soon enough. Better they see us and draw their own conclusions than invent wilder ones. She stiffened slightly. You intend to stay, then? It is my land, he replied. Whatever stories surround it. I do not give up at the first hard stone in the soil. And what am I in this field of yours? She asked. A stone, or a crop you did not expect? He met her gaze. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But you are not something to be thrown aside. She looked away, busying herself with the coffee. Sit, she said. We will talk while we drink. They sat opposite each other at the table. The coffee was thin, but hot. Yesterday, he began, you told me a great deal. I understood some of it, not all. You spoke of documents naming you and this farm. You spoke of a broken engagement. You spoke of your uncle's displeasure. I would hear it again, slower if you can bear it. I have had little else to occupy my mind, she replied. I can bear it. She looked at her cup. My parents died when I was young, she said. A carriage accident on a wet road. I was taken into my uncle's household. He had no daughters, only one son. I was useful, a companion for his wife, an ornament at dinners, someone to play the piano when guests required it. You were happy? He asked. I was resigned, she said. My position was clear. I depended on his generosity. In time he would arrange a marriage for me, and my duty would be to accept gratefully. And he did, Jonathan said. Arrange one. Yes. Lord Ashcombe, the name seemed to sour the air. He was of good birth, suitable age, and a temper that crackled beneath the surface like a storm that never breaks. He hid it well when it pleased him. It pleased him less and less as we became better acquainted. Jonathan watched her face. He was cruel, he said quietly. To servants, to horses, to those who could not answer back, she said. He never raised his hand to me. He never needed to. His words were sharp enough. When I saw how he treated those beneath him, I understood how he would treat a wife in private. I told my uncle I could not marry him. Jonathan lifted his cup, then set it down without drinking. And your uncle reacted poorly. For a man like him, she said, my refusal was more than disrespect. It was ingratitude. He had given me a home. He had fed and clothed me. Now I repaid him by endangering a valuable alliance. He tried to persuade me, then he tried to intimidate me. In the end, he said very calmly that I had embarrassed him and that the matter would be handled. How? She folded her hands. They announced that I was overwrought, she said, that the pressures of the engagement had affected my nerves, that I required rest and quiet. It sounded compassionate. Society nodded and pretended to believe it. I was sent here in a comfortable carriage with 2 maids and a small field steward. They said I would remain for a few months. I was too stunned to argue. You thought it temporary. I thought he would cool, she said, that he would find some other object for his plans, that perhaps in time he would forgive my disobedience. I did not foresee being erased. What happened to the maids, the steward? They stayed for a while, she said. They kept the house, managed the little garden that was left, rode into town for supplies. Then one day the steward received a letter. His face changed when he read it. He said there had been a change in orders. The maids packed. They left early the next morning. I watched the carriage go and waited for another to arrive. It did not. And no one returned. No one. She smiled without mirth. At first I thought there had been some misunderstanding. That my uncle would be furious when he discovered I was alone. I wrote to him, I wrote to my aunt, I wrote to an old governess. I sent every letter with what coins I had via the post in town. I received no replies. Nothing? Nothing, she said. Silence is a language too, Mr. Clark. In time I learned to hear it. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. And the documents? He asked. The ones that mention you and this land. Before the engagement soured, my uncle's lawyers prepared certain agreements, she said. They detailed the lands that would accompany my marriage. This farm was among them. It is small, but it lies along certain boundaries that matter to men who draw lines on maps. I knew nothing of such things. I signed where they told me. Later, when I was sent here, one of the junior clerks sent me copies. Perhaps he pitied me. Perhaps he was merely thorough. I read them. I found the clause that tied my future to this place. And you kept them hidden? Yes. She looked toward the floor where the boards were slightly uneven. If my uncle realized I still held those papers, he would have taken them. So I learned to be cautious, to let him believe I was exactly what he wished me to be, forgotten, harmless, grateful for my quiet exile. And all this time, Jonathan said, you waited for someone to buy the land. I waited for any change, she replied. I did not know if he would sell or build or send a distant cousin. What I did know was that as long as the deed remained in his name, he controlled every piece of the board. If someone else stepped in, even by accident, he would be forced to show his hand. Jonathan leaned back, the chair creaking. Yesterday you asked if I believed in Providence, he said. I said nothing. Now I am not sure what I believe. That makes two of us, she replied. When they finished their coffee, they went through the house together. Jonathan moved from room to room, opening shutters, letting in light and air. Eleanor followed, sometimes ahead of him, pointing out where the roof leaked, where floorboards were weak, where the windows refused to close properly. This was the parlor, she said, standing in a room with a faded rug and a piano missing 2 keys. They furnished it for me when I arrived, as if I would be entertaining guests. The illusion lasted only a few weeks. The furniture is still sound, he said, testing a chair. It's more than I expected. I wondered sometimes if he left it as a reminder, she said. A whisper that I had once sat among better things. He found the small study where a narrow desk stood under a window. And here? He asked. She hesitated. This is where I keep what matters, she said. Letters, documents. I can show you some of them. Not all, not yet. I have learned to be cautious even with kindness. That is fair, he said. Trust is like planting. It grows best when not forced. She opened a drawer and took out a bundle of papers tied with a ribbon bleached almost white. On top lay a letter bearing the Duke's heavy hand. Below it, neatly folded copies of legal pages with flourished signatures. May I? He asked. You must, if you are to understand what you hold, she said. He read slowly, tracing the formal phrases with his finger. The language was dense, but the meaning pushed through. Names, boundaries, conditions of marriage, mentions of the party of the second part, herein referred to as Eleanor Whitmore. It is real, he said at last. I had no doubt of your word, but seeing his signature next to yours, papers have a weight, words do not, she replied. That is why men like my uncle fear them. He looked up. You said there is more you are not yet ready to show. There is, she said, not because I question your honesty, but because once some things are seen, they cannot be unseen. They obligate. I will not force you into a promise you are not prepared to keep. He nodded slowly. Then we will start with what we have, he said. This much alone would trouble the Duke if placed before the right eyes. Yes, she agreed quietly. Enough to make him wish to avoid any public dispute, which is why he may try to settle this quietly, Jonathan said, by offering money, by questioning your mind, by telling me I have misunderstood. You understand more than you think, she said. You read those lines with a farmer's eye, looking for what grows from them. He smiled faintly. I look for roots, he said, and for stones that will break a plough. They spent the rest of the morning taking stock. Jonathan measured the yard, checked the small barn, inspected the well. The water at the bottom was low but not gone. It tasted metallic, but not foul. "It can be cleaned," he said. "Lined again. The soil is dry but not dead. It will take time and sweat." "I can offer one more readily than the other," she said. "You have done both, by the look of things," he replied. By midday, sun poured down hard. Jonathan wiped his brow and glanced at the road. "I should go to town," he said. "Word of the sale will spread. Better I hear the talk than let it grow in silence. We need flour, more salt, some nails, and I should speak to the man at the post office in case any letters for you have been misplaced." Her mouth tightened. "If any letters arrived, they were turned away long ago," she said. "Still, it will do no harm to ask. But you must be careful what you say and how you describe me." "I thought of that," he replied. "I will not tell them you are the Duke's niece, not yet. They know only that someone lives here. I will say I found a lady abandoned, and that she is recovering her health. That is near enough to the truth." "They will imagine all sorts of disgrace," she said. "They already do," he answered. "This way, at least they will see you as someone under my protection, not as a mystery they are free to prod." She looked at him for a long moment. "And what if they laugh at you," she asked, "for buying this land, for sheltering a stranger with a ragged dress and a grand name?" He shrugged. "People have been laughing at me most of my life," he said, "before I owned anything. At least now they can say the fool and the farm in the same sentence. It gives them variety." A flicker of something like admiration passed through her eyes. "Take the smaller sack," she said. "You can trade eggs and a little flour from what is left. I will prepare a place for you inside should you decide the porch is too cold when you return." "When I return," he corrected gently. He hitched the mare to the wagon again. As he climbed up, Eleanor stepped to the edge of the porch. "Jonathan," he paused, reins in hand. "Yes?" "If they press you with questions," she said, "about me, about this house, remember that you owe them no explanations, not even the smallest." "I know. I have spent too many years explaining myself to those who deserved nothing from me," she said. "I would spare you the same habit." He tipped his hat. "I will say only what serves us," he replied. He drove toward town. The road seemed shorter the second time, though the mare took it at the same steady pace. At the general store, the bell above the door jangled as he entered. Heads turned. "Well now," Tommy called from behind a barrel. "Look who comes back from the land of ghosts. Did the house fall on you yet, Mr. Clark?" "Not yet," Jonathan said. "It seemed glad of the company." Mrs. Harrow looked up from the ledger. "You're back quick," she said. "Changed your mind about the land?" "No," he replied. "I need more supplies, and to speak with Mr. Jenkins at the post. But first flour, salt, sugar if I can afford it, and tea if you have any." "Tea?" She arched a brow. "That is a luxury for a man in your position." "It's not for me," he said. "There's a lady at the farm. She has been living there some time alone." The room went quiet. "A lady?" Mrs. Harrow repeated. "What kind of lady?" "The kind who knows how to pour tea properly," he said. "The kind who was left there without enough to live on." "A wife we did not hear about?" someone asked from the back. "No," Jonathan said. "Not my wife. Not yet. A woman abandoned ought not to be forced to explain herself while she is still finding her feet. I will speak for her if anyone must." He felt the weight of their eyes. "So it's true," Tommy said slowly. "There really was someone there. I thought that was just old woman's talk." Mrs. Harrow's voice was softer now. "Is she respectable?" she asked. "She is a human soul," Jonathan replied. "She has been treated poorly. That is all you need to know." A murmur ran through the store. "Now see here, Jonathan," an older man near the sacks of grain said. "You come into town, buy the Duke's worst land, then tell us there is a mystery woman on it under your care. People will talk." "They already are," Jonathan said. "So let them hear this. The farm is mine, by law. The woman is my guest, under my protection. I will not tolerate any man speaking of her with less respect than he would give his own sister." There was a small silence. Then Tommy smirked. "Big words from a man with holes in his boots," he said. Jonathan looked down at his boots, then back up. "They have carried me through honest work," he said. "That is more than can be said for some men's fine shoes." A few people chuckled. The tension eased a little. Mrs. Harrow cleared her throat. "You'll have your flour and tea," she said briskly. "At no extra charge for the tea. If there is a woman out there alone, she will need some comfort. And if she is under your protection, We will see she is not entirely without friends." He met her eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. After collecting his purchases, he walked to the post office. Mr. Jenkins, a thin man with ink-stained fingers, peered over his spectacles. "Clark," he said, "what brings you here?" "I bought the Duke's old farm," Jonathan replied. "I wondered if any letters ever came addressed to that house, or to a lady living there." Jenkins frowned. "Can't say as I recall," he said. "Most of the Duke's business comes through his city office. As for the farm, well, we had a few letters years back, for an E. Whitmore. Then word came that all correspondence was to be forwarded to the Duke's main estate. After that, nothing." "You forwarded them?" Jonathan asked. "Of course," Jenkins said. "The Duke's steward himself came and gave the instruction. Said the lady had returned to the city. We don't cross a Duke's steward, Clark." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "I see," he said. "Thank you for telling me." On his way back through town, he felt the eyes on him again. Some curious, some skeptical, some oddly respectful. Word traveled faster than horses. By the time he reached the farm, the sun was leaning west. Eleanor waited on the porch, hands clasped. When she saw his face, she straightened. "What did they say?" she asked. "They said enough," he answered, climbing down. "They know there is a woman at the farm. I told them you are under my protection. I did not give them your name." "And the letters?" "Forwarded," he said, "by order of the Duke's steward, to your uncle's main estate. They told the post you had returned to the city." Her lips curved in a bitter line. "Returned," she said. "Yes, I returned so thoroughly that not a single word was sent my way." "I am sorry," he said. "You did not do it," she replied. "Still, thank you for asking." He carried the parcels inside. She saw the tea and touched the packet lightly. "A luxury," she said. "A necessity," he replied. "If we are to face dukes and documents, we will do so with proper tea." They shared a brief laugh. It eased something between them. As evening came, they ate a simple meal of bread, boiled potatoes, and a few eggs. Jonathan spoke of the farm, the repairs needed. Eleanor offered what help she could give. "I have 2 hands," she said. "They may not be calloused, but they are not useless." "I have seen the way you manage that stove," he said. "You will learn the rest." After dinner, she grew quiet. "You say you spoke for me," she said. "In town." "I did. That may cost you," she said. "In work, in friendship, I have little of either to lose," he said. "What I gain here matters more." "What do you gain?" she asked. He hesitated. "A chance to do something that feels right," he said. "For once, not merely necessary." She nodded slowly. "That is a rare chance," she said. "You should hold to it." The sky deepened. He laid his bedroll on the porch again. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will begin on the fence. A farm without a decent fence is an invitation to trouble. We will also speak more of those documents. I need to know exactly what they say, even if not everything at once." "Tomorrow," she agreed. He slept more soundly that night. The next morning passed in steady work. He pulled up broken posts, measured new lines. Eleanor helped where she could, carrying tools, holding boards, fetching water. They spoke in short bursts between tasks, their conversation weaving between practical matters and small glimpses of their pasts. By afternoon, a more solid section of fence stood at the front of the property. Jonathan wiped his forehead and leaned on a post. "It is a beginning," he said. "For both of us," she replied. He was about to answer when he heard it, the distant sound of wheels on the road. Not the slow rattle of a farmer's wagon, but a smoother, more polished roll. A carriage. Eleanor went still. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "Yes." They stepped to the edge of the yard. Dust rose in the distance. The shape of a dark carriage came into view, moving with deliberate purpose. As it neared, Jonathan saw the glossy horses, the shining harness, the neat driver in livery. On the carriage door, faded by sun and dust, a crest he did not recognize, but Eleanor clearly did. Her face drained of color. "That is not a neighbor," he said. "No," she murmured. "That is my uncle's business." The carriage rolled to a halt before the house. The driver climbed down and opened the door. A man in a well-cut suit stepped out, carrying a leather portfolio. His hair was threaded with grey, his expression composed. He looked first at the house, then at Eleanor, then at Jonathan. His gaze was cool, assessing. "Good afternoon," he said. I am Mr. Harrow, legal representative of the Duke of Ashford. I assume one of you is Jonathan Clark. I am, Jonathan said. Harrow inclined his head. Then we have business, Mr. Clark, he said calmly. I have come on behalf of His Grace to correct a serious mistake that was made regarding the sale of this property. Mr. Harrow's gaze moved slowly from Jonathan to Eleanor, then back again. I was informed the property would be empty, he said. It seems my information was incomplete. Eleanor stepped forward before Jonathan could answer. Your information has often been incomplete where I am concerned, Mr. Harrow, she said. Or perhaps simply convenient. His expression flickered just for a heartbeat. Lady Eleanor, he said, I see you are still here. Where else should I be, she replied, when your employer left me with no other direction. Jonathan glanced between them. You know each other, he said. Mr. Harrow has been in my uncle's employ since before I could spell my own name, Eleanor said. He prepared the agreements you now hold the results of. Harrow's jaw tightened. We will discuss those matters in an orderly fashion, he said. For now, let us begin at the beginning. Mr. Clark, may we speak inside? Jonathan looked at the house, then at Eleanor. If you have business with me, he said, you may conduct it in front of the lady who has lived on this land longer than either of us. Harrow considered him a moment. Very well, he said. I have never feared the light. They went into the parlour. The room seemed smaller with Harrow in it, his presence pressing against furniture and faded curtains. He set his portfolio on the table, unbuckled it, and drew out several folded papers. First, he said, let me congratulate you, Mr. Clark, on your purchase. It is always admirable when a man seeks to better his station through property. Jonathan waited. Unfortunately, Harrow continued, in this instance, an error was made. The office clerk who processed the transaction was unaware of certain prior arrangements relating to this land. The sale should not have gone through. His Grace is most distressed that such a mistake occurred. Distressed enough to ride out himself? Eleanor asked. Harrow did not look at her. His Grace is occupied with many affairs, he said. He sends me as his authorized voice in such matters. And this voice says? Jonathan prompted. Harrow folded his hands. In simple terms, Mr. Clark, the sale is voidable, he said. Through no deliberate fault of your own, you have entered into an agreement that cannot stand. His Grace wishes to rectify the situation without causing you undue hardship. He is prepared to refund your $100 in full and to add a generous sum as compensation for your trouble. You will sign a release relinquishing all claim to the property. The matter will end there. Jonathan stared at him. You are offering to pay me to walk away, he said. I am offering to restore you to a position better than the one you held before you entered into this unfortunate arrangement, Harrow replied. You will leave with more money than you arrived with, and without the burden of a useless farm. And what of the woman you left here? Jonathan asked. Harrow's eyes moved to Eleanor at last. Lady Eleanor's situation is a family concern, he said. Once the confusion over the land is resolved, arrangements will be made to place her in more appropriate lodgings. By which you mean, Eleanor said coldly, some other silent corner where I may be filed away, perhaps without even a stove this time. Your tone does you no credit, Harrow said. Your uncle has acted with more patience than many men would. My uncle has acted with convenience, she replied, and you have assisted him with your careful papers and your empty phrases. Jonathan tapped the deed in his pocket. You say the clerk erred, he said. Yet I saw no hesitation when he took my money, stamped the papers, and pushed them toward me. I signed in front of witnesses. The sale is lawful. Harrow's smile was thin. Lawful, perhaps. Equitable, no, he said. The law is not blind to such things. His Grace could pursue the matter in court, arguing that the sale was conducted without full disclosure of prior claims. It would be a tangle that could take months, even years, to unwind. I offer you a way to avoid that tangle entirely. And I suppose, Jonathan said slowly, that if I accept your money, I must also promise to say nothing of the lady who was left here. Harrow spread his hands. There would be no reason to speak of such things, he said. You are a farmer, Mr. Clark. You know the value of keeping one's affairs simple. I also know the value of a straight furrow, Jonathan replied. Things grow crooked when you start to bend around what you should go through. Eleanor's eyes flickered toward him, surprised. Harrow's gaze cooled. You may flatter yourself that you are part of some grand injustice, he said, but the truth is simpler. You bought a piece of land that does not suit His Grace's current purposes. He is willing to buy it back at a profit to you. That is all. And the documents tying this farm to Lady Eleanor, Jonathan asked. The ones that give her certain rights if she marries the owner. Harrow's fingers tightened on the table. She has been sharing old tales, he said. They are more than tales, Eleanor replied. Your own hand is on those papers. Drafts, he said, never finalized, outdated, binding on no one. They bear his signature, Jonathan said quietly, and hers. His Grace's position on those documents has evolved, Harrow said, as positions often do in the light of new circumstances. You would do well not to pin your hopes on ambiguous phrasing. Jonathan leaned forward. I pin nothing yet, he said. I only wish to understand why a duke who considered this land a nuisance yesterday finds it worth overpaying for today. Harrow's jaw flexed. His Grace is not obliged to explain his reasons to you, he said. He is, however, choosing to treat you more generously than most men in his position would. Consider this carefully, Mr. Clark. You can leave here with money in your pocket and no enemies, or you can remain on this dry patch of ground, clinging to a technicality while my employer's displeasure grows. Which future serves you best? Jonathan let the question hang for a moment. And which future serves Lady Eleanor? He asked. Harrow looked at her with something like weariness. Your future was never meant to stand on such fragile ground, he said. Your uncle would prefer to forget these old misunderstandings and provide you with a quieter, more respectable arrangement. A new prison, she said. Perhaps with thicker walls this time, to keep curiosity out. Protection, Harrow corrected. From men who might use rumors and half-truths to their advantage. The world is unkind to women who are spoken of too freely. And yet you ask a poor farmer to walk away from the only property he owns, she said. Is that kindness? This man owes your uncle nothing, Harrow said sharply. He will be compensated, and he will be spared further entanglement in matters far beyond his concern. Jonathan pushed back his chair and stood. Mr. Harrow, he said, I do not make decisions with a man's voice buzzing in my ear like a fly. You have come with an offer. I have heard it. I will not refuse you without thought. But neither will I sign anything today. Harrow rose as well. You misunderstand, he said. This is not a matter that benefits from delay. It benefits me, Jonathan replied. And since I am the one whose name is on the deed, I will choose the pace. Harrow's eyes hardened. If you force this into official channels, he said, you may find the process less pleasant than this conversation. I have had many unpleasant days, Jonathan said. I survived them all. Eleanor stood too, quiet but unbending. You once told me, Mr. Harrow, she said, that the law is a river. It flows in the direction of the hand that digs the channel. Perhaps you have been digging for my uncle so long, you have forgotten that others can hold shovels. I will return, Harrow said, ignoring her, with more formal documents, and perhaps with others who can impress upon you the seriousness of your position. I suggest you reflect on the wisdom of defiance. I will reflect, Jonathan said. And when you return, we will speak again. On my porch, in my house, on my land. Harrow gathered his papers with quick, precise movements, slid them back into the portfolio and snapped it shut. As you wish, he said, but understand this. His Grace does not forget insults or obstacles. He walked to the door. At the threshold, he paused and glanced back at Eleanor. Lady Eleanor, he said, you are not helping yourself by encouraging this man's illusions. I tried obedience, she replied. It did not help me either. Their eyes met for a long, quiet moment. Then he inclined his head a fraction and stepped out. They watched from the doorway as the carriage rolled away, dust rising behind it. Only when it was a distant shape did Jonathan speak. You knew he would say these things, he said. I knew he would try to make you feel foolish for even considering resistance, she answered. He has had practice. Has he always spoken so politely? Jonathan asked. That is his gift, she said. He can draw a noose with words alone and make a man thank him for the necklace. Jonathan leaned against the doorframe. Do you think he will go to court? He asked. Not if he can avoid it, she said. Courtrooms have windows, people look in. My uncle prefers his difficulties handled where eyes are fewer. He mentioned others who might come, Jonathan said. Who did he mean? Clerks, perhaps. Local officials he believes he can sway, she said. Men who wear respectability like a coat. They will come with neat papers and gentle warnings. They will tell you that people of your station do not meddle in such affairs. And you? He asked. What do you believe I should do? She went very still. It is not my place to command your choice, she said. I have had enough of men deciding my path. I will not become one of them. That is not what I asked, he said quietly. You have lived under his hand longer than I have known his name. You see farther in this than I do. What do you believe is right? She stared out at the empty road. I believe, she said slowly, that if you take his money and leave, you will save yourself much trouble. I also believe you will spend the rest of your life knowing you walked away when you might have stood. And I believe that if you stay, if you insist on the rights you bought and the ones I carry, my uncle will find ways to make our lives narrower than they need to be. She turned to him. I cannot promise you victory, she said. Only struggle. I know too well how heavy that promise weighs. And if I stay, he asked, do you want me to stay? Her throat worked. Yes, she said at last. For myself, I do. Not because I think you owe it to me, but because I am tired of fighting shadows alone. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, as if settling something within himself. Then I will not sign, he said. Not today. Not without seeing every stone in this field. She let out a slow breath she did not realize she had been holding. You should know, she said, that once you take this step, my uncle will no longer see you as a minor inconvenience. You will be an obstacle. I have been an obstacle to many men, Jonathan said, usually to those who preferred their laborers silent. That is different from crossing a duke, she said. Perhaps, he answered, but the ground feels the same under my feet. They spent the rest of the day in a strained silence, broken by short, practical exchanges. Jonathan fixed a loose shutter that banged in the wind. Eleanor mended a torn curtain that let in too much evening sun. Both moved with the restless energy of people who had heard a clock start ticking. That night, Jonathan slept inside for the first time, in the small back room Eleanor had prepared. The bed was narrow but clean. He lay awake for a while, listening to the house settle. Morning brought a letter. They found it tucked between the slats of the gate, the paper stiff, the seal unbroken. Jonathan recognized the same crest he had seen on the carriage. He cracked the wax and unfolded it on the kitchen table. Well, Eleanor asked. He read aloud. Mr. Clark, he began, as discussed, His Grace remains willing to resolve this matter without resort to formal measures. You are hereby given notice that if you do not respond to his offer within 7 days, his office will proceed with actions to contest your claim. You are advised to seek counsel and to reconsider the wisdom of allowing yourself to be influenced by persons whose understanding of their own circumstances is impaired. Respectfully, Edward Harrow, legal representative. Eleanor's hand tightened on the back of the chair. Impaired, she repeated. Such a delicate word for she does not know what is good for her. Jonathan set the letter down. He warns me against being influenced, he said, as if I were a child caught in a story. In his world, she replied, any woman who resists is either hysterical or confused, and any man who listens to her is a fool. Jonathan's jaw set. I have been called a fool by better men than him, he said, and by worse. They spent that day and the next in a kind of suspended animation. Outside, the work continued. Jonathan dug around the well, clearing debris, testing the stones. He walked the boundary lines, noting where the fence still held and where it sagged. Eleanor worked alongside him when she could, then retreated to the house to sort through her papers, reading and rereading the lines that had become the map of her exile. On the third day, they walked together along the edge of the property as the sun lowered. You pace like a man counting his steps to a gallows, she said lightly. I am counting days, he replied. 7, the letter said. 3 gone, 4 left. You could end it at any time, she reminded him. Sign his paper, take his money. And leave you, he said. She looked away. I have learned to be alone, she said. I do not wish to practice it further, but I can. I do not doubt it, he said, but I am less willing to learn. She stopped. You are not bound to me by anything yet, she said. Not by law, not by promise. He faced her. I am bound by something, he said. Call it stubbornness if you like. I have lived too many years with men telling me I am nothing. If I let them tell me now that my signature, my money, my deed mean less than their convenience, then they will be right. I cannot bear that. Your pride may cost you, she warned. Perhaps, he said, but there is more than pride at stake. There is you. Her cheeks colored. I am not a reward for your courage, she said. No, he agreed. You are a person who has been wronged. Standing beside you feels like planting something in good soil. Hard, but worth the work. They walked on in silence for a time. The evening air was cool. May I ask you something? She said at last. You may. Are you afraid? He took his time answering. Yes, he said finally. A little. Not of Mr. Harrow's letters. Of the way this could end. Of losing what small hold I have on the life I wanted. Of failing you. You cannot fail me, she said quietly, unless you become like them. Unless you begin to believe that I am less because it is easier. He looked at her with something like wonder. I do not think I could, he said. On the fourth day, a man from town rode out to the farm. Mr. Miller, who owned a few acres and a gossiping wife. He dismounted awkwardly near the gate. Afternoon, clerk, he said. Mrs. Miller sent me to see if you needed anything. Such as, Jonathan asked. Well, Miller shifted. Word is you've got yourself in the Duke's eye. Not a place most men like to stand. Folks are saying you ought to take the money and come back to wages. Better a live-hired hand than a dead landowner, eh? Jonathan's mouth tightened. No one has threatened my life, he said. Only my patience. Miller shrugged. Threats come in many coats, he said. His Grace could make it hard for you to find work. Hard for you to sell crops if you manage to grow any. Town listens when he clears his throat. I know how to live on little, Jonathan replied. I have practice. And the lady? Miller asked, lowering his voice. What will become of her if you dig your heels in? Some say she's not quite steady. Too long alone out here. Jonathan felt heat rise in his chest. She is steadier than most men I have met, he said. What unsettles people is that she knows her own mind. Miller held up his hands. I meant no harm, he said. Only, you know how they talk. I thought you should hear it straight. I thank you, Jonathan said, though the words were stiff. You have delivered your wife's concern. You may tell her we are not in need of advice. Miller nodded, swung clumsily into his saddle, and rode off. Eleanor had been standing on the porch, listening. When Miller was gone, she came down the steps. So even the town is telling you to flee, she said. They are not entirely wrong. They are not entirely right, he replied. They do not know what I know. And what is that? She asked. He hesitated. That you are worth more than any sum Harrow could carry in that neat portfolio of his, he said. That leaving you here to be collected like a misplaced package would shame me more than any poverty. Her eyes shone, but she blinked the light away. You use plain words, she said. I find I prefer them. The fifth day brought another letter, this one shorter, the handwriting sharper. Harrow again, reminding Jonathan that time was nearly gone, that silence would be taken as defiance, that further steps would be regrettably necessary. Jonathan read it, folded it, and set it aside. You are very calm, Eleanor said. I am not calm, he answered. I am decided. There is a difference. On the sixth day, rain came. A fine, steady drizzle that softened the air and turned the yard to a thin layer of mud. Jonathan welcomed it. The land needed water. He stood under the eaves, watching the drops fall. Eleanor joined him, pulling a shawl around her shoulders. Do you think he will come tomorrow? She asked. If not tomorrow, soon, he said. Men like Harrow do not waste ink on idle threats. And when he comes, she said, what will you tell him? The same as before, he replied. That I will not sign away my rights for his comfort. That this house, this land, and the woman on it are under my protection. She looked down at her hands. Those are words a man usually reserves for his wife, she said softly. He turned his head. Do you object to them? He asked. She was silent for a long moment. I do not object, she said at last. I only wish they did not require you to carry so much weight. I have carried other loads, he said. This one I choose. The rain eased. Evening drew in early. Inside, the house felt smaller, the air thick with waiting. Eleanor moved restlessly from room to room, touching objects as if to assure herself they were still there. At last, Jonathan found her in the study, standing over the desk with a scattered pile of papers. "Eleanor," he said quietly. She turned. "I have been unfair to you," she said. "In what way?" "I have told you part of the truth and held back the rest," she said. "I told myself I was sparing you. In truth, I was sparing myself the fear of seeing everything in your eyes." "You owe me no more than you wish to give," he said. "I chose my path with what I already knew." "That is not enough," she replied. "Not anymore. If you are to face my uncle's hand with me, you must see its full shape." She took a steadying breath. "There is one more thing," she said. "Something I discovered after I was sent here. Something that explains why my uncle did not simply cut me off without a word, but chose instead to hide me where the law still whispers my name." Jonathan stepped closer. "What is it?" he asked. She looked at the floor, then at him. "I cannot tell you," she said. "Not like this. You must see it." She knelt suddenly, pushing aside the edge of the rug beneath the desk. Beneath it, the floorboards bore faint markings, scratches that formed a rough rectangle. She slid her fingers along them, found a hidden notch and lifted a narrow panel of wood. Beneath the boards, in a shallow hollow, lay a dark wooden trunk, no bigger than a travel case, its surface scarred but sturdy, a small brass lock gleaming faintly in the dim light. Jonathan stared. "You have had this here all along," he said. "Yes," she replied. "It holds copies of everything that matters, letters, agreements, and one document I have never shown to anyone, not even the maid who helped me hide it." She lifted the trunk with both hands and set it carefully on the desk. The lock clicked softly as she turned a tiny key she drew from a ribbon at her throat. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "What lies inside will explain why my uncle fears this land so much," she said, "and why his threats will not end with simple letters if we stand against him. It will also give us one last advantage if we are brave enough to use it." Inside the trunk, papers lay in careful bundles tied with faded ribbons. Eleanor's fingers hovered over them before she chose one, wrapped in an older, darker strip of cloth. "This one," she said. "I found it after I had been here a year, hidden among the drafts you saw yesterday. I do not know if the clerk meant me to see it or if he mislaid it, but it explains more than any other." She unwrapped the cloth and unfolded a thick sheet, the ink browned with age, but the handwriting sharp and clear. Jonathan stepped closer. "Read it," she said. "Please." He took the document. His reading was steady now, used to the curling phrases of legal language. "It is a codicil," he said slowly, "an addition to an earlier agreement. It names you, Eleanor Whitmore, and this farm, by its full description." His brow furrowed. "It states that, upon your marriage to the lawful owner of this property, certain rights over adjoining lands, long-term leases, grazing, access to water, would pass into your joint control." He glanced up. "It is more generous than what was in the other papers," she said. "I found them together. The first agreement promised me a dowry. This one promised me a measure of power." He looked down again. "There is more," he murmured. "It says that if you are deemed unfit in mind, or if you die without heirs, those rights revert entirely to the Duke. But until then, they are to be honored, signed by him, witnessed by two men. One of them, Harrow." Eleanor nodded once. "You see why my uncle prefers me quietly forgotten," she said. "As long as I exist, as long as I am capable of understanding my own affairs, that paper is a knife at the edge of his estate. And if you marry the landowner, I become harder to erase," she said. "He cannot claim I am weak-minded if another adult stands at my side and contradicts him. He cannot pretend I vanished if I appear in public with a husband and documents in hand." Jonathan read the signatures again, his jaw tight. "He tied his own knot," he said. "He wrote his name under yours. Now he wishes to pretend the rope does not exist." "Yes," she murmured, "and he would have succeeded, if not for you." He set the codicil carefully on the desk. "Does Harrow know you have this?" he asked. "He suspects I know more than I show," she said, "but I am certain he believes this stayed in the city office. It is not the sort of paper one expects to find under a niece's floorboards." "Why did you never use it?" he asked gently. "You have had it for years." She hesitated. "Use it how?" she said. "Walk into my uncle's drawing room alone and wave it under his nose? Present it to a court with no lawyer to speak for me? I was a woman hidden in a forgotten house. Without someone like you, that paper was a promise written on water. And now, she said slowly, we have two things we did not before, the deed to the farm in your name, and the possibility of a marriage that would bring this codicil fully to life. He looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing the years she had waited folded inside her. Eleanor, he said quietly, if we use this, he will come at us with everything he has, even if he keeps it polite, even if he keeps it quiet. You know that. I do, she said. It is why I buried it. Every time I thought of unearthing it, I saw the storm it would call, and I was alone. And now? He asked again. She drew a breath. Now I am not, she said. Silence settled around them, thick but not hostile. Outside, the last of the rain tapped on the window. Jonathan rested his hands on the edge of the desk. We have three paths, he said slowly. We can burn this and pretend we never saw it. Take what comes, with only the old agreements to stand on. We can show it to Harrow and try to frighten him into better terms. Or we can do what it describes, make it truth in the eyes of the law, not just ink. She watched his face. You are better at counting paths than you claim, she said softly. He shook his head. I am only a man who has spent his life choosing between bad soil and worse, he said. This is the first time I have seen a field that might grow something worth the risk. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper. You speak as if our marriage was simply another crop, she said lightly. Plant, water, wait, hope. He met her gaze. I speak as if it would be something I would tend with my whole heart, he replied. Her eyes widened just a little. You make it sound very simple, she said. It is not simple, he said, but it is clear. I could marry you purely to spite your uncle, to claim these rights he wishes to keep. Men have married for worse reasons. I will not. If I ask you, it will not be because of this paper alone. Then why? She asked. He hesitated, as if weighing whether to open a different kind of trunk. Because, he said, somewhere between the first moment I saw you on that porch and this moment now, with your hands on the edge of your own freedom, I began to care what becomes of you more than I care for my own comfort. Because when you walk into a room, it feels less empty. Because when I imagine leaving this house, the worst part is not losing the land. It is the thought of you standing at the door, watching me go. Color rose in her cheeks, slow and unsure. You say that as if you love me, she whispered. I do not know how men of your world define love, he said. I know only that when Harrow offered me money, I thought of your face when you spoke of being forgotten, and I could not say yes. I know that the idea of standing in front of those men with you at my side feels right in a way nothing else in my life ever has. If that is not love, then the word is poorer than I thought. Her fingers tightened on the paper. Jonathan, she said slowly, do you understand what it means for you? To marry me? To tie your life to mine when mine drags the weight of a duke's resentment and a society's whispers? I have lived under the weight of other men's opinions since I could walk, he said. At least this weight would be shared with someone who looks me in the eye and speaks truth, not orders. She gave a short, unbelieving laugh. You make it sound almost attractive, she said. It is more than almost, he replied. But I will not pretend there is no fear in it, there is. You are afraid, she said. Yes, he answered, of failing you, of misstepping in a world I do not know, of standing up to power and finding my knees weaker than I hoped. But I am more afraid of stepping back now and spending the rest of my life wondering what might have grown if I had stayed. She looked down at the codicil, the names, the conditions, the promise. I once refused a marriage, she said quietly, because the man who asked saw me as something to own, a fine horse to complete his stable. My uncle never forgave me. If I accept you, if I stand with you, I do not want a bargain where I am simply another tool against him. I would not take you as a tool, Jonathan said at once. Even if we never used that paper, I would still want you. This, he gestured to the codicil, this is a weapon you carry, not what you are. She raised her head. And if I was simply a farmer's wife, she asked, with no papers hidden under the floor, would you still ask? He thought of the mornings at the stove, her hands coaxing life from a tired fire. The way she walked the boundary of the fields with him, skirts damp with dew, listening when he talked of soil as if it were a stubborn child. The way her laughter, rare but genuine, seemed to settle in the corners of the house and soften them. "Yes," he said simply. "I would." Tears burned briefly in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You speak plainly," she murmured. "It makes it very hard to defend myself against you." "Is that what you wish to do?" he asked gently. "Defend yourself against me?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No," she admitted at last. "Not anymore." He stepped around the desk, so there was nothing between them but the narrow stretch of worn rug. "Eleanor Whitmore," he said, his voice low but steady, "will you marry me? Not because your uncle wrote foolish promises years ago, not because this land holds secrets, but because we might build something honest here, together, whatever may come." She looked up into his face, searching for any trace of hesitation, any hint of pity. She found neither. "I have waited a long time," she said slowly, "for someone to ask me for myself, not for what I could bring to a table. I did not think that person would be a farmer with rough hands and holes in his boots. Nor did I think the woman I would ask would be a duchess with a trunk of legal weapons," he replied. "Yet here we stand." A shaky smile curved her lips. "Yes," she said, "I will marry you, Jonathan Clark." The words felt strange on her tongue, and then strangely right. Relief and something like astonishment crossed his face. For a moment, he almost reached for her, then checked himself. "May I?" he asked. She nodded. He took her hands. His were warm, calloused, solid. Hers were finer, but they met his grip without flinching. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You thank me?" she asked, half laughing. "Most men would think I was the one gaining everything." "We are both gaining," he said, "and both risking." She looked back at the codicil. "We will need witnesses," she said. "Someone to perform the ceremony. It should be done properly, not hurried in a kitchen with you saying the words and me hoping they count." He smiled faintly. "I agree," he said. "We can speak to the pastor in town, and to Mrs. Harrow. She seems to have a kind heart beneath her sharp tongue. If she stands with us, others may follow." "And Harrow?" she asked. "What of him?" "We will write to him," Jonathan said. "Tell him the truth, that we intend to marry, that we hold this codicil, that we are prepared to present it to whoever must see it. He may hope to frighten us from that path. Better he know we are not stumbling into it blind." "You would show him?" she asked, surprised. "Not the paper itself," he said. "Only enough to make him think. Men like him fear what they cannot fully see. A shadow of a blade can unsettle them as much as its edge." She nodded slowly. "And the town?" she asked. "They already talk after this." "Let them talk," he said. "Better gossip than silence, at least then we are not ghosts." She smiled again, weak but real. "You say such things," she murmured. "It makes me almost look forward to their stares." They spent the next hours planning. Jonathan fetched clean paper and ink. His handwriting was slow but careful as he drafted a letter to Mr. Harrow. "Sir," he wrote, reading the words aloud as he went so Eleanor could hear, "in reply to your recent communications, I inform you that I do not accept your offer to void the sale of this farm. I purchased it in good faith, and I mean to keep it. Furthermore, I intend to marry Eleanor Whitmore, presently residing on this property. As owner of the land named in earlier agreements, I am aware that such a marriage has legal consequences with respect to certain adjoining rights. We are prepared to present all relevant documents to any authority necessary. Respectfully, Jonathan Clark." He set down the pen. "Too plain?" he asked. "Perfect," she said. "He will understand every word, and none will give him easy footing to twist." They sealed the letter with what wax they had and set it aside to take to town in the morning. Later, as the light faded, they sat together at the small table, speaking of practical things. How much flour they would need. What could be sold to pay the pastor's fee? Which dress of Eleanor's could be mended into something fit for a wedding? "You should have a ring," he said. "I have nothing to give you as fine as you deserve." She looked down at her left hand, bare and pale. "I would rather have an honest promise than a ring that glitters and hides rot," she said. "But if it matters to you, we can find some simple band, gold without ornament. It will last longer than fashion." "It matters," he said. "Not for show. For the sake of feeling something solid when we speak of what we mean." They fell into a quiet unlike those of previous days. Not tense, not full of unsaid fears, simply full. Every small task seemed tinged with a new purpose. Sweeping the floor, washing dishes, folding a blanket. All things done now with the thought, this is our home. That night, when Jonathan went to his narrow room, Eleanor lingered at the doorway. Do you regret it yet? She asked. He shook his head. Not yet, he said, and I do not expect to. If you wake in the night with doubts, she began. I will tell you, he said. Doubt is like mold. It grows best in dark corners. If it comes, we will fetch it into the light together. She exhaled and almost laughed. Good night, Jonathan, she said softly. My husband-to-be. The phrase felt strange and shy on her tongue. He seemed to savor it. Good night, Eleanor, he replied. My wife-to-be. When she lay down in her own room, sleep did not come at once. Her mind walked backward through years of quiet, of letters unanswered, of days measured only by the sound of wind through lonely rafters. It moved forward, too, toward a church she had not yet seen, toward faces turned toward her hand in his, as they spoke words that would bind them in more than ink. At last her thoughts settled on a simple, surprising truth. For the first time since she had been sent to that farm, the future did not look like a repeating pattern of the past. It looked like something unwritten, open, uncertain, and yet held by two hands instead of one. Morning came clear and cool. Birds chattered in the trees near the fence. Jonathan harnessed the mare, while Eleanor wrapped the codicil and the other key documents in cloth and tucked them safely into a leather satchel. Are you ready? He asked, one foot on the wagon step. She looked at the house, the fields, the faint line of the road. Yes, she said. Whatever awaits us there, it is better than waiting here alone. They climbed onto the wagon seat side by side. As the mare started forward, the farmhouse grew smaller behind them, but neither felt it slipping away. For the first time, it was not a prison being left or a risk being entered. It was a home they were driving out from together, to claim the right to keep. The wagon wheels rattled over the last stretch of road into town. Eleanor sat straight beside Jonathan, gloved hands folded over the satchel in her lap. Inside it, the codicil and the other papers shifted with every jolt, a small, dense weight that seemed to tug on the air around them. You are very quiet, Jonathan said. If I open my mouth now, she replied, I may forget how to close it. He smiled a little. Then save the words for when they matter most, he said. We will need them. They passed the first houses. Curtains twitched. A boy pointed. A woman at a wash line shaded her eyes with a wet hand, watching as the wagon rolled by. Eleanor felt their looks but did not lower her gaze. Let them see you, Jonathan murmured. Let them see us. I am trying, she said. Every instinct I have learned tells me to shrink. I am tired of obeying it. They stopped first at the general store. Jonathan tied the mare to the rail and helped Eleanor down. The bell over the door gave its usual jangle, but the chatter inside faded quickly. Mrs. Harrow looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes took in Eleanor's neat dress, the satchel, Jonathan's steady grip on her arm. You came, she said. We did, Jonathan replied. Is Pastor Green in town? He is, she said slowly. He's at the parsonage, just behind the church. Why? Because we mean to be married, Jonathan said, his voice firm but simple. Not in secret, not someday. Soon. A hush fell. Tommy peered around a stack of barrels, eyes wide. Married? He blurted. To the lady from the ghost farm? Eleanor turned to him. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, she said, and I assure you I am quite alive. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the room. Mrs. Harrow came out from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. Is this wise, Jonathan? She asked in a low voice, with the Duke's man sniffing around. Wise or not, it is what we mean to do, he answered. But before that, we have a meeting with Mr. Harrow. He may bring officials. We need witnesses there, people who can say they saw us speak plainly and stand together. Mrs. Harrow's eyes softened. You shall have them, she said. My husband will come. I will too. There are a few others with more sense than fear. I will send word. Eleanor touched her arm. Thank you, she said. I know this may bring you trouble. Mrs. Harrow shrugged. Trouble comes whether you invite it or not, she said. Better it come while one is doing something worth the bother. She looked at Eleanor more closely. And you, she asked, are you walking into this with your eyes open? Wider than they have ever been, Eleanor replied. Mrs. Harrow nodded once. "Then I will stand beside you when the time comes," she said. They walked from the store to the small building that served as the town hall. Out front, a few men already lingered, curiosity pulling them in like a tide. Inside, the air smelled of paper and dust. A table stood at the front, with several chairs behind it. Mr. Harrow was there, of course, portfolio on the table before him. Beside him sat Mr. Jenkins from the post office, and another man Eleanor did not know, his coat a little finer than the others, the county clerk, perhaps. When Jonathan and Eleanor entered, the low murmur in the room shifted. People turned. Mrs. Harrow slipped in behind them. Her husband followed. Tommy hovered near the back wall, eyes round. Harrow rose, smoothing his cuffs. "Mr. Clark," he said. "Lady Eleanor, you received my letter." "We did," Jonathan answered. I replied. "Yes," Harrow said. "An interesting document. Vague, but interesting. You intend to marry, you say?" "Yes," Jonathan replied. "And you claim to hold documents relating to certain rights over the Duke's adjoining properties," Harrow went on. "I am curious to see what scraps you believe give you such confidence." Eleanor stepped forward, the satchel held firmly. "They are not scraps," she said. "They are your own work, Mr. Harrow. You may not remember every line you have drafted in your career, but I assure you, this one remembers you." He regarded her coolly. "Let us proceed in some order," the county clerk said, clearing his throat. "My name is Mr. Wallace. I have come at Mr. Harrow's request, though I am sworn to the law, not to private interest. Let us deal first with the question of the sale. Mr. Harrow, you contend the transaction was flawed." "I contend it was conducted without full disclosure of relevant prior agreements," Harrow said. "Had His Grace's office been fully apprised, the property would never have been sold." "And yet it was," Jonathan said. "I paid. I received a deed. I have it here." He placed his folded deed on the table. Wallace picked it up, read, nodded. "This appears in order," Wallace said. "Signed, sealed, witnessed. On its face, it is valid." "On its face," Harrow repeated. "We can all agree that appearances can mislead." "Sometimes," Eleanor said quietly. "They reveal more than words." Wallace glanced at her. "And you, madam," he said. "You are Eleanor Whitmore," she said. "Niece to the Duke of Ashford, though he has not used the term with any warmth for some time." Murmurs rose. Someone near the back whistled under his breath. "You claim relation to His Grace?" Wallace asked, startled. "I claim nothing," she replied. "I state a fact. If you doubt it, you may ask Mr. Harrow. He has known me since I was a girl in my uncle's house." All eyes turned to Harrow. He inclined his head, stiff. "Lady Eleanor is indeed His Grace's niece," he said. "Her family circumstances, however, are not relevant to this matter." "They are to me," Wallace said under his breath, but he motioned for her to continue. "You say you have documents?" "I do," Eleanor said. She opened the satchel and drew out a bundle. "These are copies of agreements drafted in my uncle's office years ago. They concern this farm and my person. They bear my uncle's signature and Mr. Harrow's as witness." Harrow's mouth thinned. "We have reviewed earlier so-called copies," he said. "They are incomplete and out of date." "You have not seen this one," Eleanor replied, holding up the codicil wrapped in its faded cloth. "I know, because I found it where you never expected it to be, in the same packet as the other drafts. Perhaps misfiled, perhaps forgotten, but not undone. Mr. Wallace, will you read it?" Wallace accepted the paper with care, as if touching something that might burn. He unfolded it, his eyes moving slowly over the lines. The room was silent, but for the crackle of the stiff sheet. After a long moment, he looked up at Harrow. "Is that your hand?" he asked, pointing at the bottom. Harrow's jaw worked. "It appears to be," he said. "But as I have already stated, these were drafts." Wallace turned the page over, examined the seal. "And this is the Duke's signature," he continued, "clear as day, with his crest affixed." "It was his intention at the time," Harrow said. "Plans changed. The engagement to which those terms were attached dissolved. The document was never meant to be enacted." "Did he revoke it in writing?" Wallace asked. "Strike it out? Replace it?" Harrow hesitated. "No," he said, "because there was no need. Without a marriage, the conditions it describes are irrelevant." "Until now," Eleanor said. She moved closer to the table, every step deliberate. "I was promised once to a man I could not respect," she said, voice steady enough for the room to hear. When I refused him, my uncle decided I was more valuable hidden than honored. He sent me to that farm under the guise of rest, then allowed the world to believe I had returned to the city. He withdrew my name from his invitations, his letters, even the post office's records. But he did not erase this. She laid a hand gently on the codicil. "This is not a draft," she said. "It bears his seal. It speaks plainly. If I marry the owner of that land, the rights it lists will pass to us. If I am found unfit in mind, they revert to him. If I die without heirs, they revert to him. Until then, they are ours to wield." He prepared this when he thought to marry me to a man of his choosing. He did not foresee that another man might lawfully buy the land and lawfully ask for my hand. Wallace looked from her to Jonathan. "And you intend to marry?" he said. "Yes," Jonathan replied. "Not to spite the Duke, to build a life together. The paper does not change that. It only changes how vulnerable we are to his whims." "And you are in your right mind, Lady Eleanor?" Wallace asked. A few people chuckled. Eleanor lifted her chin. "I assure you, sir," she said, "no one who has spent years alone on a forgotten farm and learned to feed herself on little has the luxury of losing her wits. I am perhaps angrier than is fashionable, but my mind is intact." Even Harrow's mouth twitched at that. Wallace coughed to hide a smile. "I have no authority to declare a noblewoman sane or otherwise," he said, "but I see nothing here to suggest you are unfit to understand your affairs. Mr. Harrow, unless you can produce documentation revoking this codicil, or evidence that Lady Eleanor is in fact incapable, I must regard this paper as binding." Harrow's fingers drummed once on the portfolio, then stilled. "Even if you do," he said tightly, "it does not force His Grace to accept this in marriage. He may refuse recognition. He may contest every line. He may try," Wallace said, "but he would do so in the light of day, with witnesses. Documents such as this do not vanish because they are inconvenient." He looked at Jonathan and Eleanor, then at the townspeople. "I cannot compel a duke to approve a union," he said, "but I can recognize a lawful marriage contracted between consenting adults. I can affirm that this sale was valid, and that, to my reading, these prior agreements enhance rather than weaken Mr. Clark's claim. If His Grace wishes to challenge that, he must do so through proper channels. He cannot simply send messengers to frighten a farmer off land he legally bought." Murmurs of approval rose. "Seems clear enough," someone said. "Never saw a duke's man look so sour," another muttered. Harrow's gaze swept the room. He measured the faces, the mood, the potential for scandal. When he spoke again, his voice was smooth, but there was steel in it. "You make bold judgments for a man of modest authority, Mr. Wallace," he said. "His Grace may disagree with your interpretation." "He may," Wallace replied, "but the law will still hear mine." Harrow exhaled through his nose, a controlled release. "Very well," he said. "If Lady Eleanor insists on binding her life to a man of such limited means, and if Mr. Clark insists on clinging to a patch of dust, there is little more I can do today." He turned to Eleanor. "You understand," he said softly, "that this will change nothing in your uncle's heart." "It may change something in his habits," she replied. "That is enough." "And you, Mr. Clark," Harrow continued, "do not imagine His Grace will forget you, or forgive easily." Jonathan met his gaze. "I do not ask his forgiveness," he said, "only that he remembers my name correctly when he mutters it." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Harrow closed his portfolio with a snap. "I will report what has occurred," he said. "If His Grace chooses to pursue the matter further, you will hear from me. Until then, I advise you both to show discretion. One victory in a small room does not mean you have won the wider war." "We are not at war," Eleanor said. "We are simply done surrendering." Harrow held her gaze for a long moment. Something like reluctant respect flickered there. Then he bowed, more formally than he had since he arrived. "Good day, Lady Eleanor," he said. "Mr. Clark." He left, his footsteps crisp on the wooden floor, the door closing firmly behind him. Silence followed. Then Wallace spoke. "I cannot promise you peace," he said to Jonathan and Eleanor, "but I can promise that if this ever reaches my desk again, I will remember what I saw here, a woman who knows her own mind, and a man who bought his land fair and square." "Thank you," Jonathan said. "See that pastor quickly," Wallace added, almost smiling. The sooner your union is set on paper and spoken before witnesses, the harder it will be to push aside. They stepped out into the sunlight. The sky was clear now, bright without being harsh. People clustered around them almost at once. Tommy darted forward. "Is it true?" he asked, eyes shining. "You're really going to marry her?" "Yes," Jonathan said. "And she's really a lady? Like a proper one?" Eleanor answered him herself. "I am a woman who has spent years boiling potatoes and mending shirts," she said. "If that makes me a lady in your eyes, then yes." Tommy grinned. "I like her," he announced. "She talks better than the storybooks." Mrs. Harrow elbowed him aside gently. "You two go to the parsonage," she said. "I will gather whoever is willing to stand as witness. There may not be many fine hats, but there will be honest faces." Eleanor's heart beat faster. "So soon?" she whispered to Jonathan as they walked. "Unless you wish to wait," he said. She shook her head. "I have been waiting since the day they left me at that farm," she said. "I see no virtue in another day." Pastor Green was a thin man with kind eyes and a voice that never seemed hurried. He listened to their request, to a simplified version of their story, to the fact that they wished no delay. "You understand," he said gently to Eleanor, "that this will set your path. Once I speak these words over you and you answer them, they will not be easily unsaid." "I have had words spoken over me that I did not choose," she replied. "Disgraced, hysterical, ungrateful. I would dearly like to stand under words I choose for myself." He nodded. "And you, Mr. Clark," he asked, "you take this woman not for the land, not for the paper, but for herself." "I would take her if the farm turned to sand and the papers to ash," Jonathan said simply. Pastor Green smiled. "Then let us not keep you waiting," he said. They chose the small church rather than a private room. Eleanor wanted the open space, the clear sound of her own voice. Word traveled quickly. By the time they stood at the front, there were more people in the pews than she had expected. Mr. and Mrs. Harrow, Tommy, Mr. Jenkins, looking solemn, the Millers side by side. Even Wallace slipped in at the back. Eleanor stood in a dress that had been patched and repatched but carefully pressed. Mrs. Harrow had given her a small sprig of something green to tuck at her collar. Jonathan wore his cleanest shirt and a jacket brushed within an inch of its life. In his nervousness, he had forgotten about the holes in his boots. Pastor Green opened his book, then closed it again. "I know the words," he said. "You know the words. Let us not bury them in too much ceremony." He looked at Eleanor. "Do you, Eleanor Whitmore, choose this man, Jonathan Clark, to be your husband?" he asked. "To stand beside him in hardship and in ease, to build a home with him, to speak truth to him even when it is difficult, and to let him care for you as you will care for him?" Eleanor's throat tightened. She had heard words like these once before, spoken in a grander room to a man she feared. They had felt like chains then. Now they felt like an offer of wings. "I do," she said. Her voice did not shake. "With my whole heart." He turned to Jonathan. "And you, Jonathan Clark," he said. "Do you choose this woman, Eleanor Whitmore, to be your wife? To stand beside her when others forget her, to honor her mind and her courage, to share with her whatever you earn and whatever you are, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Jonathan said. "With everything I have." Pastor Green nodded. "You have no rings?" he asked. Jonathan looked almost apologetic. "Not yet," he said. "What money we had went to paper and flour." Mrs. Harrow stood suddenly. "Wait," she said. She pulled a simple gold ring from her finger. "This was my mother's," she said, walking up the aisle. "She would haunt me if she knew I let a woman be married bare-handed under my own roof." She pressed it into Jonathan's palm. "It is plain, but it has seen a long, faithful life," she said. "Let it see another." Eleanor blinked hard. Jonathan took her left hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit as if it had been made for her. Pastor Green smiled. "Then by the authority vested in me by the state, and by the vows you have spoken, I declare you husband and wife," he said. "What you have chosen today, let no man unchoose for you." For a moment, the room was utterly still. Then Jonathan turned to Eleanor, his expression open, almost boyish in its wonder. "May I?" he asked softly. "Yes," she breathed. He bent his head and kissed her. It was not a grand, sweeping gesture. It was simple, steady, full of all the things he did not yet know how to say. Her hands rose of their own accord, resting on his shoulders. She felt the strength there, the warmth. The room blurred for a heartbeat, reduced to the feel of his mouth on hers, the certainty of his presence. When they drew apart, the church seemed to exhale with them. Applause broke out, awkward at first, then fuller. Tommy whooped. Mrs. Harrow wiped her eyes with her apron. "Well then," Wallace murmured to Mr. Jenkins, "if the Duke wishes to argue with that, he will have to do it in front of a very determined audience." The days that followed were busy, almost dizzying. Word spread, as word does. Some clucked their tongues, some shook their heads. But many, more than Eleanor had dared hope, offered quiet kindness. Mrs. Miller brought a pie to the farm, by mistake, and left it anyway. Mr. Jenkins stopped Jonathan in town to say that a certain letter from the Duke's estate had arrived, and that he had taken his time delivering it. When at last he did bring it, Jonathan and Eleanor opened it together at the kitchen table. The handwriting was not the Duke's. It was Harrow's, neat and controlled. "Lady Eleanor, Mr. Clark," Jonathan read aloud, "His Grace has been apprised of recent events. While he does not and cannot endorse every choice you have made, he has authorized me to state that he does not intend at present to pursue legal action regarding the sale of the farm or your marriage. In the interest of avoiding public unpleasantness, he is prepared to formalize certain concessions regarding the rights in question in exchange for your agreement not to expand any claims beyond those already documented. A draft of such an agreement will follow. Respectfully, Edward Harrow." "He yields," Eleanor said softly, "as much as a man like him can be said to yield." "He chooses quiet over battle," Jonathan said. "That is enough." Another letter followed, as promised, with careful terms. Wallace reviewed it in town, nodded, and advised them to accept. It secured their rights to the farm and to specific grazing and water access, along with a modest yearly payment in recognition of the Duke's past oversights. It was not an apology, but it was something more practical. They signed. Harrow did too. The matter shifted from looming threat to fixed line on paper. Months passed. The well was cleaned and lined anew. The fence stood straight. The first planting was cautious but hopeful. Corn, beans, a small patch of potatoes, a row of cabbages. The soil, once called useless, began to show what it could do under patient hands. Eleanor rose early now, not because the days were all the same, but because each one felt like a step in a new story. She baked bread, tended the kitchen garden, learned to mend not only dresses but harness straps. Jonathan taught her how to tell when rain was coming by the smell of the wind. She taught him how to balance the household accounts with neat, precise columns. Sometimes in the evenings, they sat on the porch with tin cups of coffee watching the sky fade. The farmhouse no longer felt like a place abandoned. It felt lived in. A shawl over a chair, boots by the door, seeds drying in a bowl near the window. One evening, as crickets began their thin chorus, Jonathan touched her hand. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The big house, the gatherings, the people who pretended to listen when you spoke," she considered. "I miss the piano," she said. "Sometimes, and books I did not have to count before buying. But the rest—" She shook her head. "I do not miss being watched more than truly seen. I do not miss speaking only to say what others wish to hear." "And now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "when I speak it matters, even if I am only telling you that the beans are ready for picking." He smiled. "That matters a great deal to me," he said. "And you?" she asked. "Do you ever wish you had taken Harrow's money and left? Found some other, easier life where no Duke ever hears your name?" He looked out at the fields, faint rose visible even in the dim light. "I have known easier days," he said. "Days when I bent my back under another man's orders and slept without thinking. But I have never known better ones." She laid her head on his shoulder. His arm went around her naturally, as if it had always belonged there. "I never imagined," she said quietly, "that being sent away would lead me to something finer than what I had before." "Finer?" he echoed, amused. "This?" He gestured at the patched porch, the worn steps, the lopsided barn. "Yes," she said firmly, "because in that world everything belonged to someone else, even my future. Here things are worn, but they are ours. So is the future. And so are you." He kissed the top of her head. "Then let us keep making it worth the price," he said. They fell into a comfortable silence. Fireflies appeared near the fence. small lights flickering in the dusk. The house creaked softly as it cooled from the day's warmth. After a while, Eleanor spoke again. "Do you know what I remember most?" she said. "From the day they left me here. Not the carriage driving away, not the servants' faces. I remember the sound of the wind in the empty rooms. It felt as if the house itself was asking where everyone had gone. And now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "when the wind moves through, it sounds like it is checking to make sure we are still here." He chuckled. "Are we?" he asked. She tightened her fingers around his. "Yes," she said. "We are here. We are not going anywhere." Years later, when people in town spoke of the farm at the edge of the boundary, they no longer called it cursed or barren. They called it the Clark place, or sometimes, with a little smile, the Duchess's farm. Children were told stories of the lady who had once been forgotten and the farmer who refused to forget her. Some of the details grew fuzzy in the telling, as stories do, but the core remained. Two people had taken what was meant to be a quiet ruin and made it into a living home. On a spring morning, as the first light touched the fields, Eleanor stepped out onto the porch, hand resting for a moment on the doorframe. Inside, she could hear Jonathan moving about, the soft thud of his boots, the clink of a cup. The smell of coffee drifted out. She looked over the land, the soil, the fences, the young shoots pushing up, stubborn and green. Then she turned back toward the door. "Jonathan," she called, a smile in her voice, "come see what we have grown. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.